All right, welcome back. This is going to be part 24 of Dinosaurs and Man. And we are actually going to start going through Job chapter 40. Job chapter 40, and we're going to look at Behemoth, and we're going to start looking at the description, the physical features. But what we're going to do now, is I'm going to read through the entire chapter of 40. And we're going to go as far as we can. And for time's sake, don't want to make these too long. And I'm going to make little comments and give insight about little things in here. But guys, just let me remind everybody is that all the scripture that I use, I get from the King James Version. That's just the Bible that I've always used. And I've had a lot of people tell me that the King James Bible is hard to understand. And so, I have never really had that problem, and if there's a word that needs defining, I will look it up in the concordance. And so there's not many words, if that. Sometimes a phrase can be a little bit vague on what they're trying to say, what the interpretation may be. But even at that, you can still look at the entire chapter and you want to look at the whole thing. What is the whole thing saying in its context? And then you can use the concordance to gain further knowledge on words. And so even in the English language, there's words that I don't know what they mean. Well, it doesn't mean the English language is too hard to understand. I just grab a dictionary and look and find out what the word is. And so, but at any rate, let's go ahead and let's get started going through this chapter now. Now, going back on what we previously talked about, I gave you just a brief overview of Job's life, kind of the man he was, a really good man, God-fearing man, and he had a catastrophe hit him, and behind the scenes, God and Satan was having a little debate on Job. And so, guys, I can't quite understand exactly why God would allow Satan to do what he did. But again, we don't have the mind of the Lord to understand why he did it. There was a purpose. There was a purpose for what he did and what he allowed Satan to do. There was a purpose through it. And we just don't understand all the aspects about it. And so, but at any rate, it goes on to say, this is chapter 40, starting in verse 1. It says, "Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said," now, let me just say this. Job at this point is now asking God, why? Why are you allowing this to happen? What have I done? Why is this? He's now starting to come to his end where he's now getting frustrated. And now the Lord is coming back and he's saying, "Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said, shall he that contendeth," that word contendeth means debate or strive. So you would say, "Shall he that striveth," or "he that debateth with the Almighty, instruct him? He that reproveth," that means to correct, "he that corrects God, let him answer it." Then Job answered the Lord and said, "Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer thee? I will lay my hand upon my mouth." Now, that laying your hand upon your mouth, you ever say something and you go, "Oops, I shouldn't have said that." First thing you do is you put your hand over your mouth. You're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." That's basically what he's saying there. "Behold, I am vile." He's looking at himself the way we all should. We're all just nothing but, especially as Christians, any work that we do for the Lord is nothing but just a pile of filthy rags, And so, but anything that we would try to do now let me back up and say this. Anything that we would do to try to earn a righteousness in and of our own selves, without the Lord, that is just a pile of filthy rags. I need to make that clarification there, because we will be, as Christians, we will be rewarded for those things that we did in our bodies, good and bad. And the good things that we did, we will be judged in what our motives were. And so now there's things that we do that we just want to be a big show off and to show off ourselves. You can see a lot of that on television. And so some of these evangelists on television are real flashy and stuff. They talk about their riches and their prosperity and all that stuff, and they try to make that a motive into righteousness and a result of living righteousness or being a Christian. And so what they're doing is that is a false way to look at Christianity. Can God give you riches? Yes, he can. He gave Solomon riches. He asked Solomon, he said, what shall you ask of me? Ask me what you want and I'll give it to you. And at first, Solomon had the right mind. What he did is he asked the Lord, he said, you made me king. I need wisdom and knowledge so I can govern over the things that you've given me, because I don't know how to do it. So the Lord was very pleased in what he asked him. And so on top of that, he gave Solomon great wealth. And so I don't want to go into the whole story on Solomon, but in the end, he ended up slipping away because he did that which the Lord had commanded them not to do, to have multiplicity of wives. And so he had darn near 1,000 of them. And those wives ended up getting him to set up pagan gods and worship centers, and drew Solomon away from the Lord. And so, but at any rate, it says here that, going on, it says, once have I spoken, but I will not answer. Yea, twice, but I will proceed no further. All right, it says, then answered the Lord unto Job out of the whirlwind, and said, gird up thy loins now, like a man. Now that girding up of the loins, if you notice the picture on the screen here, this is what girding of the loins means. Now they would wear robes. Robes was a common thing that they would wear back then. And then probably they still do wear them in certain areas. But girding up the loins, you can't run or do much work when you have this robe, as if the gentleman is wearing it on the top left hand of the screen. So this right here shows you how they would pull up the robe and they would tie it up so they would have a free mobility to run or do any type of hard labor. It wouldn't be constrictive as for having that robe on. And so that's what girding of the loins means. Now, it says, I will demand of thee. Going on, it says, I will demand of thee, and declareth thou unto me. Wilt thou also disannul? Now that word disannul means to make of none effect, to make void. So it would say, wilt thou also make of none effect my judgment? Wilt thou condemn me, that thou mayest be righteous? Hast thou an arm like God? Now God's asking these questions to Job. Hast thou an arm like God? Or canst thou thunder with a voice like him? Deck thyself now with majesty and excellency, and array thyself with glory and beauty. It goes on. Cast abroad thy rage of thy wrath, and behold everyone that is proud and abase. Now that word abase means to bring low or to humble. Look on everyone that is proud, and bring him low, and tread down the wicked in their place. Now God is asking Job these questions. He's trying to remind Job who God is. Hide them in the dust together, and bind their faces in secret. Then will I also confess thee that thine own right hand can save thee. Behold now Behemoth. Here we go. Now we're talking about God is now, what God's trying to do, he's trying to remind Job who he is. So now he's going to start bringing things. He brought Leviathan and Behemoth, these two animals, to show Job just who God is, because God created these animals. And so he says now, behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox. And so now, that's a very interesting statement that he made there, which I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox. Now, if you'll notice, these are the days of creation. You got day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are the days, the literal 6 days that God used to create the world and the universe and everything. Now, on day 6 was the land animals. Now, Behemoth is a land animal. That's what he is. It's a land animal. Now, man was created on day 6. And so both of them were created together on day 6. So that statement that God made right there, it says, right there in 15, it says, behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. And so he's telling Job that the land animals and him were made together on day 6. That's a very interesting and a good verse to use for you creationists out there. That's another verse right there stating that the land animals were made right along with man on day 6. And so now this animal being a dinosaur, which I believe, and I'm going to show you the evidence on it, that means that dinosaurs and man were created together on day 6. They were land animals, so they would be created right along with man. So you can see the confusion that starts with those that would believe in what's called theistic evolution. They said that God used evolution to get us here. That is a compromise, guys. That's a compromise of the Bible, and it's a very dangerous thing to tread in. And so, going on, starting with Job chapter 40, verse 16. Lo now, he's talking about Behemoth. His strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. Now, guys, all I'm doing is I'm going to read through this chapter, and we're going to go into Behemoth on the next video, but let's keep on. But when he's talking about the strength is in his loins, he's talking about his legs, the thigh area. All right, it says here, his bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him, here we go again, he that made him can make his sword to approach him. Now, what he's talking about sword, he's not talking about an actual metal sword or a weapon. God can do anything just by speaking it. God can speak. So you can see that over and over and over again. When talking about Jesus in the book of Revelation, the sword that proceedeth out of his mouth. Jesus is not going to have to do anything when he comes back. He will speak it and it will be done. He will win over the enemies just by speaking it. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. And lastly here, it says, he lieth under the shady trees in the covert of the reed and fens. That would be like a swampy type of environment. The shady trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He's talking about how large this animal is, how big, massive he is. He taketh it with his eyes. His nose pierceth through snares. Now that word snares means trap. That's what it means. So he's not going to be something you're going to be able to trap. And so, guys, let's stop right there. Got about 14 minutes, believe it or not, 14 minutes into this one here. Next video, we're going to start detailing Behemoth. We're going to start looking at this, and I'm going to show you, there's a lot of show and tell stuff in this one. So just be sure and go through my previous videos, chew on that stuff. And so again, we're laying the foundation on this, but now we're getting into the meat of what Behemoth is. And so I think you guys are going to find this quite interesting. Okay, you guys take care. Love you. Bye-bye.